Welcome, everybody. I'm Adelina Comas-Herrera. I'm the director of the Global Observatory of Long-Term Care, and I'm delighted to welcome you all to this webinar of the Aging and Place Interest Group. So to start with, I'll just tell you a little bit about the Global Observatory of Long-Term Care. Some of you are familiar with it. Hopefully, for others, if you're new, then you'll learn a bit more how you can join us and be part of it. Is a platform that aims to help us with cross-national learning about long-term care. So we want to contribute to improving and strengthen care systems, and we are part of the International Long-Term Care Policy Network. The idea is that there are shared challenges worldwide, and we want to be able to showcase and learn from how different countries and localities are addressing them, and also to learn from research evidence and share that so that we can also learn and facilitate collaborations. The observatory is open to everyone, from policymakers, industry advocates, care professionals, and of course, academics. The way that the observatory works is that it's basically powered by people's willingness to share their work and knowledge. So we have our own Global Observatory of Long-Term Care publications, which include long-term care system profiles, blogs, methods, and topic guides. And if you'd like to contribute to those, you'd be very welcome. Just get in touch with us. The real source of information and learning in the observatory, I have to say, are the interest groups. And they are really, really active. We now have 23. And each interest group organizes webinars, and they share also relevant publications and resources. And they each have their own dedicated webpage within the observatory. We also have, and are gradually building over time, a database which covers experts on long-term care listed by country, topics, and methods. We already have 560 people. We also have a database on publications on long-term care, on research projects, videos of webinars, and you can search all of these by country, topic, and methods. Today, we're going to hear about the Aging and Place Interest Group, but before I'd like to announce the next webinars. We've got one on the 27th of May, which is from the COSI Experimental Interest Group, and this one is going to look at the costs of informal care using a model, a novel mode of estimating it. We will then have a webinar on the 3rd of June from the Community Mental Health Interest Group, and apologies for the Perinatal Mental Health Interest Group. And on the 12th of June, we're going to have one on integrating long-term care, and this is a shared interest group with the International Federation of Integrated Care. So with that, I'd like to bring us back to today. Today is the first webinar of the Aging and Place Interest Group. We're really, really delighted to welcome you. We're going to hear from quite a number of speakers, but first of all, I'm going to hand over to Bing-Ting Lee from the University of South Wales in Australia, who's going to introduce the interest group. All yours.
Thank you. And good morning and good evening, everybody. I'm Bing-Ting Lee. I'm a professor at the Social Policy Research Center at the University of New South Wales. I'm delighted to welcome you today to this webinar. And it's called Aging Out of Place, Rethinking Aging, Place and Policy in Times of Change. I'd like to thank the colleagues at LSE, Professor Martin Knapp and Nas Salihi and Adelina Comas from the Care Policy and Evaluation Center at LSE for their generous support in making this event possible. A quick word on the format of today's event. We are running this session in rapid fire style. Each speaker will have just 5 minutes to share a focused insight or provocation, if you like. And the aim is to raise the key ideas and make space for multiple voices and leave time for open discussion. And please feel free to submit your questions via this question box. And in this, at SPRC, we've studied aging and culturally and linguistically diverse communities for quite some years. And we've seen how older people can feel out of place not only physically, but also socially, culturally, and increasingly digitally, even if they age at home. So we think about, we try to open up new conversations about aging beyond the common frame of aging in place that has been a very popular research area for many years. So in this group, and we work together with scholars internationally, and we also produce a special issue. And the idea is we open this space to explore how changing environments affect aging. And so today's speaker come from Australia, Hong Kong, China, Japan, and Sweden. And hopefully in a later event, we will bring our other contributors and to continue with the conversation. So the speakers, please introduce yourself and fire away. And the first one, Edgar.
Thank you very much, Ming-Chin. I guess I will share my slide. Hello, and thank you for having me, everybody. So I'm Edgar Liu. I'm a senior research fellow also at University of New South Wales in a different research center called City Futures. Today, I want to talk a little bit about housing and its role in people's aging in place. As Ming-Chin mentioned, there is a lot of preference and there's also a lot of government push for people to continue to age in place, and housing plays an important role as part of that conversation. But from the research that our center has done, we are also finding that from a policy and also from a practice perspective, housing plays a strong role in pushing aging people out of place. A quick word on the center itself. So we were established in 2005, and therefore we are turning 20 this year. We are focused primarily on city-based research, both qualitative and quantitative, under those 6 particular themes. I primarily work within the housing and planning teams, but most of us actually work across a number of different teams. Earlier this morning here in Sydney, for example, we just launched the new Housing Analytics Lab, so that cuts across basically all of the themes. So sharing insights from some of the research that we have done, about 10 years ago, we completed a big national study on the downsizing preferences and habits of older people age 50 or older in Australia. And from our national survey, we found that around 20% actually relocate in later life, but less than half downsize. And that's around 43% of people who actually move within later life. And that is quite a significantly smaller proportion of those who said that they would prefer to downsize, but they don't actually end up downsizing into a smaller property. Some of the barriers they actually talked about that they brought up as preventing them from doing that was the availability of suitable housing, because most of them talked about wanting to move to a smaller but not too small a place. So, and related to that, the costs related to relocation in later life, in wanting to release equity, but also not wanting to spend too much on the next property. And the final limitation was the location of these properties that they can actually purchase to downsize into without having to move very far away, by affording something that is actually suitable. More recently, we also completed a project in collaboration with colleagues from other universities here in Australia on how do you actually age within the public housing system. Like many other places, Australia has an aging population within our public housing system, primarily because of our eligibility criteria. It's a lot harder for new tenants to access housing within the system. So a lot of tenants are actually aging with the properties that they have been living in for a number of years. Because of the residualization that we experience here in Australia, so the divestment away from providing public housing, a lot of these housing stock are also aging themselves, poorly maintained, requiring significant upgrades and repairs. From a policy perspective, the providers often have a preference to relocate tenants who have changing requirements rather than upgrade the properties, such as for accessibility purposes. So those kind of practices and policy actually remove the tenant away from their long-term home into a completely different neighborhood, community. But at the same time, they're not necessarily getting access to the types of accessible support that they need. Outside of the public housing system, within the social housing system more generally, we are also seeing that providers are seeing providing accessible dwelling as an investment opportunity because there are current government support for this. So they're coming at this from a completely different perspective rather than just providing the right kind of housing for the people who would live in them. More recently still, we did another study on retirement villages, so another different housing form and another different tenure type. Retirement villages actually comprise a very small percentage of housing for older people here in Australia, just around 5% of people aged 65 or more. And there is quite a preference against moving towards retirement village living, partly because of the mis-selling or the excessive exit fees that they perceive to have, which lead to a lack of value for money that older people often find when considering the retirement village model. Because in Australia, we use a deferred management fee model. So you purchase into the village at a lower price, but when you do sell, you also give up a part of your selling fee. So people often find that a bit of a challenging concept. There are also other similar models of retirement living in Australia that are covered by many different kinds of legislation. So you think you might be buying into a retirement village, but you're actually not some of the time. So your rights and protections are quite different when it comes to when you're actually moving into a completely different housing product. One thing that I really want to talk about, and it's something that we put forward into a special issue that Bing-Chin is helping us organize, is a different kind of a lower cost housing option for older people, which is the land lease communities, or in other jurisdictions, they might be called manufactured homes estates or trailer parks if you live in the Northern America. While they were not age-specific accommodation, they often form naturally occurring retirement communities because they are relatively cheap to buy into or rent into, and they become a default kind of retirement option for a lot of older people on very low incomes. Some of the things that we're finding in initial research was that there's often a lack of legal recognition. Here in Australia, they're actually not recognized as dwellings, so they're excluded from a lot of protections, such as from the National Building Code. They might not have the same safety requirements because they are also not residential dwellings. The locations also don't need to fit into the residential zoning. So you often find a lot of these parks and communities on floodplains, for example, which expose them to the consequences of climate change, for example. And of course, when you're thinking about aging and you're thinking about accessible features, there are structural limitations in terms of what you can implement in these relatively flimsy non-dwellings, I should say, in not very accessible locations away from surfaces. So those are the examples that I was hoping to bring up today. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on to the next one, because Professor Mark is going to have to leave earlier, so I will move him earlier.
And thank you for having me. I'm from Hang Seng University. So I just make a very short presentation. The topic of my research is place, aging, and care in transition. We are talking about a story from Hong Kong towards a more community-based integrated model for older adults. And I think similar to other places in the world, especially in Asia, we are facing population aging, which is very challenging but a celebratory event. Why? Because we have more and more senior citizens in the city. But how to manage about older people in the city, which require a lot of resources, not only about financial resources, but other form of support in making sure our older people, many of them, perhaps the majority of them would prefer aging in place. So in what way the government and the society at large will work together in co-creating an environment, or if you like, an ecosystem which can support our older people. They prefer to stay in the neighborhood and also aging in place. So this is about something about our research. And this figure shows you about the Hong Kong situation, about the number of population age 65 and over in East Asia. Hong Kong, in terms of the proportion, is quite high. And again, the population size and age structure that then demonstrate clearly we are getting more and more citizens in Hong Kong that are age 65 or above. By 2030, about 1 out of 3 population in Hong Kong would be age 65 and above. And how to manage about the older people in Hong Kong? And thanks to the government, indeed, since our changeover back to China mainland, and the government in Hong Kong, the SAR, has kept, investing in expenditure in terms of welfare expenditure and managing about older people. So if you look into the expenditure, not only in managing older people, in education, social welfare, healthcare, and also other expenditure, the government has indeed invested so much, especially after the COVID. The government has made so much investment in COVID, COVID measures. So the government is now running in terms of deficit. So in what way we can continue the level of support, and the welfare support really draw attention in Hong Kong and the region. In what way you are talking about sustainability financially and socially and culturally. So the government is pushing a more community-based integrated care for Hong Kong people, especially managing the elderly. This slide gives you the idea about different policy being rolled out in Hong Kong in supporting the older people, especially pushing more about social care and also about health integration in support. So our paper basically try to understand whether the community-based project being pushed by the government will be welcomed by our older people and in what way they are effective. So one of the examples in driving for this community-based policy change is promoting the age-friendliness in Hong Kong. So we are talking about different sectors and actors working together, including the government and the funding body like Jockey Club, the university, local community, NGO, and business collaboration together for co-creating a better ecosystem which support the elderly. They can age in place and they can stay in the local community. So through this Jockey Club Age-Friendly City project, and my university has engaged, and we are doing more in supporting the productive aging through using about the technology and community-based advocacy forum in order to support the government policy, which is about integration health and social care, and also community-based, neighborhood-based support in the when we are trying to make productive aging. So these are the details about the age-friendly city and engaging the older people through the train-the-trainer approach for making them ambassador for promoting age-friendly city. And now, after a few years, an implementation of the idea, all districts in Hong Kong are now certified by WHO as age-friendly city. Perhaps there's a lot of things to do, but at least the idea of age-friendliness is being supported and also implemented in the last couple of years. And these are some activity. And at the same time, we are also working with the industry, the community center, and also university for co-promoting social change and well-being in helping to drive this idea of community integrated social and healthcare, especially when the government in Hong Kong now is very keen about primary health. And the government in all Hong Kong districts, they set up different kind of primary health center, which is an area for supporting active aging and healthy aging through community care project, and also promoting intergenerational care for society. The whole idea is to support about sustainability of the welfare approach in the context that financially the government may face challenge to support the older people. They are on the rise. And this is one of the examples that one of the district area, the healthcare center is very successful. It's a medical welfare community collaborative model being rolled out in Hong Kong. And this example was very successful and then now being replicated to other districts in Hong Kong. So the whole idea about community-based health and care integrated model is to promote an intergenerational communication of health and care. Because of the time, I won't go into the detail, but basically it's a multi-sector and also multi-stakeholder approach. It adopts a more bottom-up in terms of decision-making rather than top-down approach as such. So I just end here by sharing with you our current research, basically talking about in what way the government has tried to push towards the community-based integrated care model in supporting older people and to make sure they can help the older people, they can age in place rather than out of place and throughout the care support system in Hong Kong. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you. Professor Mark, are you also going to present for Jane?
I think this is a joint paper.
Okay, good. Thank you. So next we have Ilan.
Thanks. And I'm going to time myself so that I talk for 5 minutes exactly. So I'm going to talk about a concept that we've been developing over the last couple of years with some of the colleagues that have already spoken, some who will be speaking. And this is the interface or the interaction between digitalization, environment, and society, and some of the challenges for aging in and out of place. And I'm Ilan Katz, sorry, I'm a colleague of Bing Ching at the Social Policy Research Centre at the University of New South Wales. So these are some of the mega trends that have been identified by the United Nations. Firstly, digitalization, development of AI. Second mega trend is environmental issues, climate change, and thirdly, globalization and migration affecting the context in which people live. So those are three mega trends that have affected global populations over the last 20 or 30 years. But policy still hasn't kept up with these changes, and there are increasingly significant implications for older people for all of these mega trends. And one of the issues is that policies that try to address social issues for these groups, for older people, increasingly encounter issues around technology and environmental changes as well. But policy and research as well tend to be rather siloed and focus on one of these aspects or two of these aspects together, but very seldom the three together and how they interact. So that's what I'm going to talk about for 5 minutes. So it's important to understand the interaction between the digital world, the environmental world, or the physical environment, and the social world, including service provision and support for older people, and particularly as these relate to aging both in and out of place. So the WHO, they have a publication, National Programs for Age-Friendly Cities and Communities, and they updated their most recent framework does actually include digital inclusion and the relevance of the natural environments and the balance between built and social environments. So it does include some of these issues, but links them loosely together. And this is a graphic from that document, and it shows the different age-friendly domains of actions, which include, if you can't read it, transportation, housing, social participation, social inclusion, civic participation, etc. I won't go into all of them. But the issue here is that these are portrayed as separate domains or separate policy domains. But digitalization and technology are not just about communication and information. They are significantly integrated into these different domains. So, for example, transport, housing, and service provision. So environment and climate, similarly, are not just about outdoor spaces, but affect housing, transport, and social participation, and increasingly as well, migration, particularly in our part of the world, where people are migrating because of climate change. Thus, these domains are all interacting rather than separate areas of action. And this is just a picture of older people and these three domains and interacting with each other. So I'm going to talk for the last 2 minutes about what are the implications. So the natural, social, and digital environments could, on the one hand, be in tension with each other. So, for example, people who engage more in digital online could be removed both from social participation, direct face-to-face participation, and service provision, as well as have less access to the natural environment. On the other hand, they could be complementary. So online forums, for example, can provide information and support to older people to access the natural environment. Social media can promote volunteering and social participation, as well as distance people from face-to-face interaction. So these three domains, although they can be seen to be in tension with each other, can also be complementary. But as I say, a lot of research hasn't really dealt with these kind of interactions and how they operate in different contexts. So we need to have a more systematic analysis of how nature, digital world, and human society interact when we try to address challenges, including migration and older people in and out of place. And so this raises several questions for policymakers: how to integrate these different domains in social policy. How can policy keep up with these rapid changes in technology? I mean, the most recent one obviously is AI, and we're still grappling with understanding how that will impact on natural environments and social environments. How to avoid silos and ensure that policies address all these three issues and how they interact with each other. And that's it. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Ilan. And the next, Yasushi Sukinari from University of Tokyo.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here. I'm joining this session from Japan. Today, I'd like to briefly present an ongoing research project that explores how aging in place can be supported through community-based legal and welfare practices. This presentation explores the relationship between Japan's adult guardianship system and the idea of aging in place. Japan's adult guardianship system was introduced in the early 2000s, alongside the creation of the long-term care insurance system. Prior to this, local authorities determined the kind of care an older person could receive. Institutional care often meant being relocated from one's familiar neighborhood and support networks. The long-term care insurance system marked a significant shift. Services became based on user choice and contractual agreements. This reform gave rise to the concept of community-based integrated care, which emphasizes receiving support within familiar surroundings. The adult guardianship system was designed to protect the rights of old adults with cognitive decline and to help them access such care through supported decision-making. Nevertheless, this aim is not always realized. The system may authorize guardians to make critical decisions, especially concerning residential relocation, without the principal's consent or in ways that diverge from their presumed will. Such decisions risk disconnecting individuals from their communities, triggering what we describe as aging out of place. This research, conducted in collaboration with Dr. Saisho, explores an alternative approach emerging in suburban Tokyo: cooperative voluntary guardianship contracts. Our study is grounded in qualitative fieldwork, including interviews and ethnographic observation. A cooperative voluntary guardianship places particular emphasis on the principal's lifestyle, civic participation, and the flexible continuity of living arrangements. Crucially, appropriate decisions based on the individual's understood values and preferences are reached through collective deliberation among engaged citizens. This initiative represents a creative reconfiguration of existing legal tools used for purposes beyond their conventional design. It embodies what Boria and Helfrich describe as a legal hack. They define it as to perform a legal hack essentially means to use and recombine existing legal tools to change their original purpose, and to support conventional legal forms with ingenious legal workarounds that can support harmony. We argue that cooperative voluntary guardianship constitutes such a legal hack. It transforms guardianship from a system primarily concerned with preserving financial and real estate assets into one that enables individuals to lead self-directed lives. We also highlight the historical context that made this innovation possible. Since the 1970s, consumer movements, led primarily by women in suburban Tokyo, have built mutual support networks. These began with food co-ops and expanded into childcare, elder care, transportation support, and even the operation of community-based nursing homes. Such activities have nurtured both tangible and intangible urban commons that support a diverse range of aging in place practices. Today, as more older adults live without close kin and as fiscal pressures grow, these movements have come to recognize collective support for decision-making as one of their most pressing and enduring challenges. Cooperative voluntary guardianship offers a locally rooted yet forward-looking response to these challenges. It not only questions the limits of the existing guardianship framework, but also shows how civil initiatives can creatively repurpose legal tools to uphold dignity, autonomy, and relational continuity in later life. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And next, Johan.
Sadly, my camera doesn't work. I don't know why. And I'm a bit too far away from Sweden to do, because I'm at the moment in Boston. So my name is Johan Nordansved, and I have a bit of a dual position. I'm at the University of Linköping, associate professor in political science. And I am also an associate professor in innovation and technology at Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm. But at the moment, I'm a visiting scholar at Institute for Social Global Sustainability at University of Boston. Anyway, so the idea behind this presentation is more like conceptual and thinking a bit of aging out of place and what does place actually mean? And often when we think about citizenship, we think a bit something that comes from Greek, which means a membership in a community, a particular political community that gives certain rights and duties. And the classical Greek understanding of citizenship was participation in self-governance of a political community, which often meant that it was often a quite exclusive group of people, often men, that weren't slaves and were born in a place and therefore had the right to decide. And it was this partnership between citizen and police, as a the place, in shared rights and duties of making and executing a public policy. So we could see here that citizenship was a very specific geographical space that existed. But of course, in modern time, it became particular important because it's have been seen as membership on a large, massive scale, where, for example, cities today is not like Athens were, a couple of thousand people, but now millions of people. And what we see in this kind of mass membership is it created certain rights, political, civil, and social rights, and to some degree duties to pay tax and obey the law. And it's a certain political dimension, which means that political rights are connected to membership in a political community to participate in the process. But Marshall, which is biggest scholar when it comes to modern citizenship, sees rights as more important as duties to participate, and see this evolutionary that you start with Magna Carta, which create distinction what the king or the government can do and not do. And then it changed, from protecting legal rights such as property towards political rights, participating, creating rules, and then the social rights in the 19th, 20th century. So what the importance here is, and what is the way it become formalized. So you have these rules become formalized in law, and then it's changing. What I think is kind of interesting is that it often forgets that citizenship is not just something that exists when it's formalized through legalization, but we're all human beings and we all had needs in all time of evolution. So even before we had the nation state, of course, people had kind of a citizenship, often informal, done through kinship groups, living in tribes and had different rules where rights were. And they were often embodied because you were born into them in a particular community that you existed in. And it was often relationships that created it, how you got access to it, and community-based. And therefore you had responsibilities that were towards the family, community, and kin, and they were exchange-based. So you can think about this, that social rights, originally were community-based, and you could, you could create probably written things, but often they were informal. The interesting thing when we see today, we see formal is a modern relationship. It's disembodied, it's not connected to your family or you're born into and so on, but it's actually for everyone who is supposed to be in a place, or and often it's a legal process to access it through the individual, through the state, and it's seen as evolutionary, and it's toward the greater good of society, and it's taxation and rule-based. This goes back to a paper we wrote about actually having a more complex understanding of what citizenship is that often it's a combination of informal and formal processes and practices. And often individuals negotiate obligations to both the state and the families, communities, and kinship groups. So there is like this, struggle between, on one side, the classical one, you rely on your family, you redistribute from your children to your grandparents and so on and so forth. And then you have also the formal state that does take care of it. And I think this is kind of interesting because if you go and you see what is then place in a modern time where you have technology, and that is, of course, changing radically because people could, they just don't have the family, but they also have all these communities that is created through online. And therefore it becomes quite interesting to see how the citizenship changes and the space changes, because both the state changes, through digitalization, a lot of things are going online, and particularly in a country like Sweden that has policies for digitalization to, on one side, they say improve services, but also to save money. And therefore I thought it was kind of interesting to combine this and looking at how like technical innovation systems, what does that change? How the state create resources and to fund, for example, digital services, but then also the access of it. And there are two tools that I find it interesting to look more into, and how that is created if you look at it from a formal and informal citizenship. And one is bank ID, and this is enormously important in Sweden. It's done through the mobile phone, and this is how you can create bank account, you can buy cars through it. And whole society in Sweden is built around this bank ID, which is a private service done through banks, but it has a legal, so you could create contract with it. And one of those things is, how do all people handle that? This is what tools are there to help them, but do they also rely on informal help, from either service providers, from the family, or even from if they live in homes? How do they handle that? Do they rely on people actually helping them to use these tools, or getting by, because a lot of society in Sweden works around it? A second one is, for example, 1177 Vård Guide, which is the Swedish National Healthcare portal offering services like appointment bookings, prescription renewals, and access to electronic health records. So everything is online. And once again, how does that, how do they, change the way we think about welfare and how we act on it, but also how does elder people access it, and what's the replacement to that, and how much do they rely on informal help to navigate these systems? And I think this is an interesting thing to do more around, because Sweden is one of those countries where, for example, we're becoming more cashless society. So the government has created a legal that at least pharmacies and grocery stores have to use them. So coming back to that again, how does this change, this relationship between the informal and formal citizenship when it comes to digital tools? And that's all I wanted to say. Hope I didn't take over the time. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. And next, Yuda.
So good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, everyone. So today, my sharing is about some research proposal on a kind of research project. So this is related to the evaluation on a kind of influence of the health services for the out of place elderly in China. So let me have a brief introduction on myself. So my name is Shi Yuda, so you can call me Todd. And I am the lecturer of the Department of Social Science of the Hang Seng University of Hong Kong. So basically, that's today I'm going to have a very brief introduction on this research project. So I will skip this part, the definition of the aging out of place, because I think most of us sitting here is very familiar with it. However, the key point here is that actually we already know that there are so many reasons can result in the situation of the aging out of place. For example, just like Elder mentioned that something like the housing, and also other research highlighted that something related to the personalities, and also the reduce of the importance of the professional networks after retirement and something like that. But even though you know that for some old people, they want to move to another place for seeking for another kind of new challenges, but the aging out of place always result in some problems to them. So including the physical problems, social problems, cultural disconnection with the familiar environment. Also, very importantly, it will result in the difficult access to the local social services such as health services. Especially this kind of problem is very significant in the mainland China, and especially the aging out of place in China is quite different from the aging out of place in other countries which we just discussed. And in the mainland China, so the most important reason for the old people to migrate from one city to another one is due to the we can see their responsibility for taking care of their grandchildren. Because you know that in nowadays China, so the young people are always under very huge pressure of the work, so they rely on their parents, rely on their work to take care of their children. So in this way, we can find about that there is a kind of tendency in China that most of the elderly out of place, they are moving with their children, with their son and daughters. And so in China, we have a kind of word to describe this kind of phenomenon that is call them as a 老漂族, meaning they are moving so during their old age. And especially this kind of problem result in a lot of problems, not only just about the social and culture, but most important is about the health services. And especially there are some observations we can see here from the frontline social workers observe the significant obstacles to the elder people to the health services in the mainland China. So it is said that the most EOPs, they encounter the difficulties in their life, and the settlement of the medical bill is the most notable challenge. And especially most of these people say that what they are most afraid is getting sickness, and therefore that because they are not secured by the social health insurance, and because previously they pay the social health insurance in another city, and now they cannot enjoy the benefits. So in this way, actually, that the government in China promoted a kind of policy, try to address this kind of problem. So this kind of policy is called as National Health Security, Direct Settlement for Cross-Provincial Outpatient Expense. So you can see call it as a DSCOE policy. And currently, because this policy set up a kind of policy goal to establish the system by 2025. So currently there are a lot of evaluation on this kind of policy, but most of them, they focus on the outcome-based evaluation and use the methods like the difference in difference, and very few of them discuss about the issue related to the context and the mechanism related to the policy outcomes. So to address this problem, we want to select the Pearl River Delta as an example, because this area is one of the center, as you can see from this map, that's the young people migrate for the for working, and their parents also migrate with them for the taking care of their grandson. And these are some evaluation questions. So including does the DSCOE policy work in the Pearl River Delta? So what are the barriers and facilitators? How do the stakeholders perceive and respond to this policy? And what are the conditions in which the policy work or not work? So basically, as I mentioned that previously, most of the research used the DID and other kind of quantitative methods to evaluate the policy, but this will result in some problems. That is, we cannot understand the real factors leading to the successful and the failed implementation on the ground. So basically, to address this kind of problem, we want to employ the method called as a realistic evaluation, and to have a kind of qualitative evaluation on this policy. So as we discussed, that the first step of the realistic evaluation is to develop a kind of program theory, and basically that this is a kind of preliminary program theory for this evaluation. So we can find about that okay.
Yeah, you will need to
finish.
wrap up. Yeah.
So we can find about there are different factors that can have an influence on the DSCOE policy. So we want to evaluate it in the practice. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you. And we are running out of time. And next time we should have a longer time slot arranged. Yeah. And there are so many interesting topics covered today. And do we have some, can we have open the floor and have a quick question before we wrap up? Yeah, I think with one of the issues, what we have come across and repeatedly to me is that this aging out of place have a very different context and in different have different meanings in different contexts, and often require a kind of a policy coordination across different domains. And then what are you, so in terms of future research on this, and are we going to do it basically by individual sector and try to look at this, or is there any alternative ways of organizing research? Or do we want to do a more sort of a, who is responding?
And can I ask the question through the? Okay. So I have a question to ask the Yasushi. So so we know that in Japan currently there are so many people, so they are not in marriage, and we know that there is a kind of popular style for taking care for the old people, especially the old women, to have a kind of mutual support with each other. So do you think that this kind of mutual support caring style in Japan is good for the address a problem in the aging out of place?
Thank you for your question. So this your point is becoming more and more important in the future, especially for our generation and the younger generations. But in this presentation, I focus on the 70s or 80s and 90s nowadays. Then, so they most of them have their sons and daughters, but they can sometimes they can't so get their family support, and then they so think to use the collective collective guardianship support. If I have more minutes, I'd like to discuss, but I have no time now.
Yeah, I think we can definitely have a further discussion offline as well. And I find particularly interesting with this idea of community guardianship. And I wonder whether that is similar to some of the practices happening in Australia as well, and whether the younger older people are looking after older people, and through mutual support and all these kind of networks, and it would be interesting to compare. And we have basically we are running out of time today. And I just give you a bit of a taster, and we are having also quite a few other people in the group, and they are also doing all sorts of research, including the changing digitalization situation. How does that affect older people? And also, we try to encourage people to think about creatively about what's the meaning of out of place. It doesn't necessarily to be getting out of your home, and maybe even if you are at the same place, you can still be out of place.
Yes.
So yes, so that is the idea of this group, and we will keep you informed of your research. And also, if you are doing research in this field, and feel free to share your publication and information with us. And we are very grateful for this whole group of the platform that help us at LSE to help us to be able to share our ideas. And hopefully you are welcome to propose ideas for future events as well.
From my side, thank you very much, and congratulations on a great start for this interest group. Looking forward to the next event, and we can have longer next time if you like.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Have a great
Thank
day
you.
and a great evening. Bye.
Thank you.